Good evening, everyone. Hope everyone is fine tonight. Tonight, we have some topics that we've kind of talked about before a little bit, but I want to go back to some of them. I've said it in the chat, but I just want to say, don't diagnose yourself tonight. But if something does click, you might want to talk to a professional about that. But so many times when we talk about the topics we're going to talk about tonight, people will see themselves in them and then they get upset about that. So please don't get upset about anything. If you do need help, help is always out there, especially if you're having a crisis. Text or dial 988. Okay? Talk to somebody, get a referral if need be, whatever you need to do to keep your life going and build it up, okay? All right. We talked about mood disorders before, but we really didn't go into them in detail. And I just wanted to go back and look. It seems to be that within psychology, there's only a focus on really two mood disorders, and they're usually seen together, but not always. One is depression, and we want to talk about that, and the other one is mania. And you'll also hear the term manic depressive, which is when the two are together, and they're called bipolar these days. Sometimes I will use older language. That's what I learned. And so I still see it that way. But, we like to rename things in psychology because once the people in the public know, it'll be on television shows and everything. And then, that phrase has no meaning anymore. So we want to make sure that we, keep up to date. And I try to. But you'll still every once in a while hear me say an old term. And I'm sorry about that. So, if somebody watches these in the future and says, oh my God, that guy was terrible, I learned in the 70s and 80s. So, Okay, I want to thank everybody for coming. I see we got more people coming in. Very good. Okay, so the mood disorders. Mostly depression is not going to be a dangerous thing for others, but it will be very dangerous to the person that's suffering from it. And we kind of have to look at depression in a staged perspective. The first stage of a depression could be just a situational depression, the loss of a spouse, the loss of a parent, some trauma or tragedy that occurs that makes you feel not very happy and depressed. And it could last up to 6 months or so. And then maybe it'll go away. But those kinds of depressions are situational. They could lead to a further depression, though. One of the questions they will ask you, if you say, you're depressed because I lost my spouse, they passed away, and they'll say, well, how long ago was that? And if you say, well, 6 months ago, okay, you'll be marked down as situational depression. If you're still in therapy 2 years after your spouse has died, they will probably mark it down as a different type of depression, because now it is a long-term depression. A lot of the names that we give, the diagnoses, the labels that we give in psychology are based on the time differential. I mean, how long has this been going on? So that's something to consider. A lot of people worry about, situational depression that will probably go away. If it doesn't, then we need to talk. So that's one of the dangers. And I wanted to look at some of the things that we will look for. Okay. Whoops. That's not the right one. Sorry. I've got two screens here. Okay. If depression, even in major depression, what we used to call major depression, goes for over like 2 weeks, but there's no activating cause, it just seems to be biological, we'll look at sleep. Sleep could either be disturbed, or the person would want to sleep all the time. Interest. Have they lost interest in things that they like to do? Has the person lost interest in life in general? Is there some sort of guilt that's felt in the depression? How is a person's energy level? Is it high or low? And if it's low, that's another sign. Pardon me. Can the person concentrate on things? If your concentration is constantly broken by feelings of depression, that's another check mark we look at. Psychologists might ask you about your appetite. And if you say, I hardly eat anything anymore, it just seems pointless. Okay, there's a sign. If a person actually slows down in their movements and it's not due to age, this might be a sign of depression. It just takes you longer to walk from one place to another. That could be a sign of depression. And of course, if people have thoughts of ending their life, that is a serious sign of depression. The other side of that is a manic side. Pardon me. Not everyone will have this. Some people just have depression. But some people also have a manic side. And that's where the bipolar comes in. And sometimes I've heard people say bipolar 1 and bipolar 2. And okay, that's just confusing to people. So I just stick with the older terms just because I think it helps people understand a little bit better, especially in an intro to psychology class. People who are in a manic state of mind have distractibility. Okay? So if they were doing something and they see something else happening over there, they're very distracted. They're very impulsive. They might go and do things that they wouldn't normally do. They might go out and spend a lot of money. They might spend all their time doing something. They get involved in a project. There was one lady who was in the literature I looked at. She would go out for world causes, like she was going to end world hunger. So she'd buy a bunch of food impulsively, some of it that would spoil, and she was going to send it to Africa or China or wherever she was going to send it to. And while she was doing that, somebody asked her about that, and they said, well, that's great because I'm involved in literacy. I'm trying to, get people more literate. And so this lady kind of like dropped the hunger thing, even though she'd bought all the food. And she started off on a campaign to increase literacy. So she was impulsive and distractible. Those two often are seen together. In a manic phase, someone might be have feelings of grandiosity. They feel like a superhero. And so they are the only one that can, stop this hunger in China. So they are the only one that can go out and do this. No, why isn't anybody else doing this? They might have flight of ideas. This is kind of like fantasies, but more like they just start on one idea and they go to the next idea, goes along with the distractibility and the impulsivity, but the flight of ideas is more a mental thing. And so they're very hard when you're trying to counsel them because you'll start working on one particular aspect, and they'll say, well, what about this? What about that? And they go off on tangents all the time. Activity is going to be increased during this. During a mania, a person will be on the move constantly. They might have an idea of finishing activities before a certain deadline. You'll see this a lot of times. People say, well, I know that someday, next 20 years, I'm going to die, so I have to finish all these books I started writing back then, and do all that. And so their activity is pressured. Okay? It's not just hyperactivity. It's towards a goal, but it's sometimes mislaid on the way. Persons in mania have sleep deprivation. They will not sleep. They will go maybe 24 hours, 36 hours without any sleep, going full tilt. They can't understand how other people can sleep while there are other people starving on another part of the planet. What's with you people? That's why the grandiosity starts. They start thinking, well, I'm the only one that cares. I'm the only one that can do it. Talkativeness. Oh my gosh. Trying to talk with a manic person is very difficult because they have pressure of speech. I talked about the pressure of activity, pressure of speech. They just keep going and going and going and going. And it's hard to stop them. So it's very hard to get a word in edgewise as far as doing any kind of talk therapy. Okay. We have some discussion in the chat about food. Okay. Very good. Yeah. Okay, so that was what I wanted to talk about mood disorders. That seems to be the main mood disorder that gets talked about and that really is worrying to people. The next thing I wanted to talk about is personality disorders. And remember, we talked about personalities are pervasive patterns of behavior, okay? And, attitudes and such. Well, a personality disorder is a pervasive pattern of maladaptive behaviors, okay? So these behaviors that don't help you as a person, don't help you at work, they don't help you get along with other people. So these patterns will come out in impaired social situations, your friends and family are like backing off away. Might come out, like I say, in the jobs and in functional living. I mean, a personality disorder can make you change the way that you live so that it's an uncomfortable sort of life. Sadly, the high-risk populations for this are folks that are young and male, so young males, people of low socioeconomic status, and low education. Now, that's not all and only, but sadly, a lot of these folks are the ones that get referred, and so they're the ones that get this label. And I don't think it's not fair, but I don't think it's a true situation. I think that many times people of a better socioeconomic status, people that have a little more money and a few more resources, might still have some of these personality disorders, but they're just not diagnosed. They haven't caused enough problems yet for them to be referred to somebody. Okay. And I'm going to show a slide here if I can find where I put it. Here we go. These cluster in these groups, okay? Probably the worst one is at the top, I would say. the paranoid, schizoid, and schizotypal, or schizotypal, however you want to pronounce that, are probably causing the most problems for people. Borderline personality disorder, histrionic, narcissistic, and antisocial. Okay, those are cluster B. They kind of go together. We're going to discuss all these, by the way. I'm not just going to name them off and leave you. And then the least likely to get you fired or lose all your friends are obsessive compulsive personality disorder, dependent personality, and avoidant personality. When we get to it, I'm going to talk about the difference between obsessive compulsive personality disorder and obsessive compulsive disorder. They are different. So I hope my sound is coming through for everybody and everything's clear so far. Okay. All right. I'm just going to leave that slide up there while I start talking about these. When we say the person's paranoid, we don't mean paranoid in the way that you'll hear later when we start talking about psychosis. A person with a paranoid psychosis or paranoid schizophrenia might be having hallucinations and delusions. The paranoid personality is just a person that just seems to, they get along most of the time, but they just seem to think everybody's out to get them somehow. Everybody's going to cheat them. Nobody else is looking out for their interests at all. Okay? So that's where those folks might have some issues. The schizoid and schizotypal, or schizotypal, if you want to call it that, these are relationship problems. So they're not schizophrenic. They're not having hallucinations, okay? But unfortunately, they've been named this, and it's very similar. I'm hoping the next time they rename things, maybe they'll rename these to something different. The schizoid person has no interest whatsoever in relationships, okay? They are seclusive, a loner. They might get a job where they work nights, so they don't have to, be with a lot of people. They just want to be left alone. And this, like I say, it's not just a desire. That's their whole personality, is to be left alone. The schizotypal is more of an eccentric type of person. They might have some magical thinking, okay? They might have odd beliefs. Not exactly delusions, but they might have beliefs that most people go, that's a little weird, okay? They're aloof, like the schizoid, and they might dress weirdly to kind of get people to leave them alone. But they actually want relationships. So that's the main difference between those two, the schizoid and the schizotypal, is the schizoid wants nothing to do with other people. The schizotypal would like to be around people, but they just can't seem to manage it. Okay? All right. I hope that makes some sense. Okay. Now, borderline personality disorder is kind of weird because they will have, it's kind of a catch-all for psychologists that can't decide where a person fits, because a borderline personality will have some of the things in other groups, but they're like a mix and match. Pick a couple. One personality disorder is not enough for you. You got a couple. So, or they might seem to have very little personality at all, if you talk to them. And it's really hard to kind of judge where they're coming from. The next two, histrionic and narcissistic, will have very similar symptoms, but for different reasons, okay? A histrionic personality disorder, a person suffering from this will have, they're very dramatic. Everything is a tragedy. Everything is a comedy. Everything's big. They have trouble with relationships with people because other people tend to go, whoa, you're just too much for me, okay? They'll read a book and they'll just be like trying to sell everyone on this book. It's the best book ever. And we know that's not the case because we know the best book ever is Shape Up Your Memory. But I digress, okay? The histrionic person just gets involved in something and just wants to get everybody else involved. Yes, Fox, he reminds you of television commercials. Wait, there's more. Yeah, exactly. The kind of, that kind of also describes borderline as well, you know? So you might see some histrionic things in borderline personality, not so much. They're more flat. And the histrionic person is never flat. They're more, like a manic sort of phase, but that's part of their personality. It's not a phase. This has been baked in over years. And it's very hard to try to help them to get out of that because what do? Convince them that, how do you convince somebody that not everything's a disaster, not everything's a tragedy? And a histrionic person would probably, if you did dissuade them that one particular part of their life is not a tragedy, they'll come up with a different one. So, okay, that's not so bad. How about this? Okay. They will give you a headache faster than most. Okay. Don says, but wait, I was being paid, sort of. Yeah. Okay. The histrionic personality traits might also be seen in the narcissistic personality. Now, you have seen a lot of videos probably and a lot of things where they say that person's a narcissist and they're trying to control me. Okay. It could be. But the narcissistic personality disorder, technically to psychologists and such, is going to be a person who feels ideas of grandiosity again. They're going to feel like they are some sort of special person. And they might have trouble discovering why other people don't feel that they're so great, they're wondering, hey, I'm really good. I don't know why everybody else doesn't realize how good I am. What's going on here? They might try to control people a bit because they want people to like them. They want to be the star of the show. Sometimes histrionic and narcissistic folks have hypersexuality, where they will flaunt parts of their body, perhaps, or do other things to get attention. They both want attention. The narcissist, though, has to be the center of attention. So if there's a conversation going on, they will butt right in and, make themselves the center of the conversation. If something's being discussed, they have a story about that, or they have a better story about that. So it's difficult to work with those folks. Probably one of the hardest groups to work with. The antisocial personality is not just antisocial as we call it in this street. We say, Carl's antisocial. Yeah, I just don't like to go out amongst groups. But the antisocial personality is a person that just does not care for people much at all. They're not schizoid, okay? They're not in that category, but they don't particularly care to be out there. They might not understand other people's emotional things. They might be, like, I don't know why that person's so happy. Or they might say, I don't understand why you're hurt by what I said. I was just telling you the truth, and then they don't have that empathy, perhaps, to feel sorry for other people or to understand that another person might have emotion as well. So, but they're not in the psychotic category. That's just part of their personality. So if you look at any of these, you basically say, okay, yeah, I know somebody like that. Yeah, you probably do. The next group, cluster C, obsessive compulsive personality disorder. Okay, we talked about obsessive compulsive disorder. Now, that was something that is fairly easy to work with. So if a person has a fear of germs and that is making them wash their hands 50 times a day, we can work with that. We can get them over that. We can pull them out. The OCD personality disorder, okay, is where it's baked into the personality. So it's not just fear of germs or hand washing. It might also involve, this that we talked about, the straightening things up. Those things are baked into the personality. So yeah, I'm much better about washing my hands. I'm much better about not having to have everything in order. But yes, I would probably fit in this category more than the other because it has invaded more of my personality. The perfectionistic type of thing that made me delay even starting to do this series, those kind of things can be a problem for a person, okay? They're probably not going to get me fired from anything. They're probably not going to lose me too many friends, but, they will cause me problems. And that's how cluster C kind of works. The dependent personality is the kind of person that's like always needing somebody else either around or to approve of what they're doing. If you know a dependent personality person, they are always calling you up and saying, I'm thinking of doing this. What do you think? And if you don't like what they're thinking, they'll just drop it. Okay, yeah, you're right. That's why I asked you, because, I wasn't sure. And they never can make their own decisions. They're very much into having that wingman or wingwoman. They always have to have somebody there to validate to them. They're very prone to get imposter syndrome. I mean, a lot of these folks will, but the dependent personality is much more likely to feel as an imposter just living. They don't feel like they might be adult enough to handle situations. The avoidant personality. Okay, these are folks that are kind of like the schizoid and schizotypal, more like the schizotypal personality disorder, because they will want relationships with people, but they just maybe feel they don't have the skills. So they avoid certain situations so they won't be put into a social situation. They will come up with very detailed rationale as to why they can't do that social situation. They can't do this job. They can't do whatever because their fear of failure is so high. And if they try and fail, that would be a disaster. So they avoid everything. They will avoid commitments. They won't probably have a long-term relationship, like a marriage or a long-term live-in relationship. They won't want to get involved with a job for a long period of time. They'll just want to work here for a couple of years and move on because they're avoiding, all that kind of a commitment. So those are some of the problems that people would have with a personality disorder. I don't know if I had anything else that I wanted to talk about in that regard. Okay, I guess one of the things we could talk about is defense mechanisms. Because these defense mechanisms are what, and Sigmund Freud came up with a lot of these, but they are mechanisms that you will use if you have a personality disorder to avoid doing those things that give you anxiety. And these will also might have come up with some of the neuroses as well, because people will use these to avoid stress and stressful situations. One of the defense mechanisms is identification. And that is where you're imitating somebody else that you consider more powerful or more with it or whatever. So you start to act like them a lot, just to kind of pull yourself in and avoid some of that fear and anxiety. Some people will have like isolation. If they'll try to dissociate away from the situation. So if somebody like attacks them, they'll just be like, oh, well, whatever. They're very upset inside, but they're trying to remove any outward manifestation of that. Okay. There might be passive aggressive sort of defense mechanisms where, yeah, I don't like what you're doing and I won't do it. I'll look like I'm doing it, but I won't exactly. And that's the passive aggressive type of person. That will show up in a lot of personality disorders and sometimes anxiety disorders too. Projection is another one where you think just because you're thinking of something, someone else must be thinking about it too. This happens a lot with like people who are having an affair outside of marriage. They'll accuse their spouse of having an affair because they're thinking about it, so they'll accuse them of it. Projection can be dangerous in social situations. Obviously, people don't like to be accused of different things they're not doing. Rationalization, okay, yeah, it doesn't matter if I don't get that because, I really didn't want it anyway. You seem to make logical statements, but it's basically to avoid a truth of some sort. But rationalization can be used well. If it's used, within therapeutic situations, sometimes rationalization can help with those. Sometimes a person will have a reaction formation where they will act in a way that is totally opposite the way they're really feeling. So the classic example always said about this is like a person feels an attraction to the same sex, but they don't want to admit that. So they become, like super macho or whatever, and they'll condemn other people for doing the exact same thing that they're doing. And that makes them feel better inside, and, protects their social status. So that is one of the defense mechanisms you might see people doing. And they think that helps their life. The adult to your adult. Yes. very good, Foxy. That very much describes that first one where a person's just kind of trying to imitate somebody else because they feel that will make them more acceptable, will win them more friends. So you can see where this could fit into a lot of those personality disorders, where a person could think, okay, yeah, that person's better than me, sort of, in one way at least, and I'm going to just take that part of their personality and use it for my own. So yeah. Now, kids will do this, of course, because that's how kids develop. You know, they learn from older people. But as adults, you know, you kind of mostly got your personality put together, unless you've got the borderline personality disorder, and you don't. And so sometimes that might come in handy. And it's not a bad thing to imitate other people's personalities that you find good. It's just be sure you pick a good model, because sometimes people pick models that aren't quite going to help them that much. And when they do that, they end up in some trouble. Okay? All right. That was all that I wanted to start covering tonight, because next week we're going to talk about psychoses, which are probably the most severe and most dangerous of our abnormal psychological behaviors. And I don't want to get into start that tonight, because that once we start that, boy, it might be a long one, or I might have to split it in two, because we will have a lot to discuss. So does anybody if you have any questions or comments about the personality disorders or mood disorders, feel free to go at it now. Sour grapes, Dan says. Oh, was sour grapes the reaction type of the defense mechanism? You know, like, yeah, I didn't, or maybe I didn't want that anyway. Whatever. Sour grapes could kind of describe a couple of those. Yeah. We all use the ego defense from time to time, because, you know, somebody, you know, attacks you or says something nasty to you, and you're like, well, how am I going to deal with this? And, you know, one of the things we'll talk about in the therapy, you know, after we're done with all the disorders, we'll talk about therapy. And one of the things we'll talk about is how to overcome some of those sort of things. Okay, I didn't really want it anyway. Yeah, exactly. You'll see also sometimes I don't remember what the name of it is right now, or what the new name is. Substitutions. Like a person says, okay, I cannot be a sports star like I wanted to be, but I can be a sportscaster. I can go on TV and describe that sport, because I know all about the sport. I wanted to be in it, but I got this injury now, and I can't do that. So maybe I'll just work into another closely related field. And that is one of the better ego defense mechanisms. You don't feel so bad. You're not a total failure. You're able to use some of the skill and transfer that to another portion of life. So that's good. I'm going to hide in my fort now? No. I told you at the beginning of this. Maybe you missed it. Do not diagnose yourself. Okay. If you see something that clicks and you want to talk to a therapist about it, okay, great. That's good. But don't take all of these things on yourself. I know a lot of people who will, you know, say, oh, that sounds like me. No, that sounds like me too. No, don't do that, please. Okay. Yeah. I was saying before in the neurosis category that no, not a lot of you will probably have these, okay? You might have them from a short-term thing, but, they come and go. Personality, some of these are very judgmental, okay? And that's why I think they're foisted upon the poor and disenfranchised. Oh, yeah, that person is, a schizoid personality. Whereas somebody who maybe is a successful business person or politician might have some of those same kinds of characteristics, and they're lauded for them. So, yeah. But don't take it personally, okay? Do these things... Okay, Dan asks a good question. Do these things shift or change over time? Manic depressive can change because it can go into remission and then come back and go into remission and come back. Personality disorders, if they're allowed to continue and they continue to cause problems for you, they will probably stay the same. Sometimes they get better. Like I say, obsessive compulsive personality disorder, bingo, I'll hold my hand up for that. But I've gotten much better. Okay, an example. I often microwave things like spaghetti in the microwave, and I don't put the little cover on, like Donna tells me all the time to do. So the microwave becomes a mess. And in my old days, I'd have to clean it out before I could even eat the food. It's cold. I'm going to have to put it back in, this time using a cover. And, now I just let the microwave get messy. And poor Donna had to clean it out the other day. And I think she was counting on my obsessive compulsive to make me eventually clean it so she wouldn't have to, but she finally gave up on that. So I'm actually considering that part of a cure for me. How about that? I've learned that I can be messy and it's not going to cause the end of the world. So, yeah, they can get better if they are worked on. But if you just leave them go, they will probably stay the same. Most of them don't get worse unless something comes along to prove them possible. Like a paranoid personality disorder, if you're thinking everybody's out to get you and then somebody tries to take advantage of you, oh, that proves my point. That proves my point. Okay, that's going to make a person more ingrained in that. Yes. Donna says, yes, I was. I always use the cover. Yeah, she's good. I will use the cover now because now that I feel that I have found success in being able to make a mess and not rush to clean it up immediately, I think that part might be cured. So, hey, I'm getting better. These little victories in life, as you get older, you have to celebrate them. And then you go, okay, now I can go back. I can clean the microwave. I can put the cover on. I can do that and not be obsessive about it. Okay. I can wash my hands in the era of the plague, but not wash them 50 times a day, only 20 or 30, like they said. And I did not slip back into washing them until they were raw. See, they're good. Yeah, look at those soft, nice hands. So, yeah, after you've reached a point where you say, yeah, okay, I've gotten over that, you can go back to using some of those behaviors again without falling back into the whole thing of it being part of your personality that has to be served. Okay, habits should serve you. Your personality should serve you. It shouldn't be the other way around. That's a key thing in psychology. Is don't serve your habits. Don't serve your personality. Let those serve you. Okay, cool. Okay, Dawn's going to talk to your counselor tomorrow. I hope I didn't open up a wound or something. I'm sorry. Yeah. Yeah, like I say, if you think, okay, I see myself in some of this, feel free to talk to somebody about it. If you know me personally, like a lot of people that are in the chat right now do, I'll be glad to discuss these things with people. But if you're watching this later and you come across some of these things and they disturb you, find someone to talk to about that, okay? Don't just assume, okay, now I'm like this forever. Great. No, there is help. There's help out there. Someone's always out there. So, okay. Yeah. Yeah, a bit of a situational depression. Yeah, understand. Okay. Yeah, like I say, some of these things, they shall pass. And we just hope that they pass quickly. But some do last a little longer, and don't let it become part of your personality if you can help it. If you consider it negative or maladaptive or causing you trouble in your relationships. Okay, folks? All right. Well, I think that's all I've got to talk about tonight. Next time we will talk about psychoses. And I will tell you right now, you hopefully will not see yourself in any of these that I'm going to mention, because most of these will require hospitalization and or heavy doses of medication, and they involve a lot of things that you don't want in your life. So hopefully next week nobody says, oh, that sounds like me. Oh my God. Okay? All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for coming by. We really appreciate it. And I'm going to put this up here just one more time. And thank you very much, folks.